back to Musings by Nikki. Today we are going to do the next steps. We're going to put the paper on and do the next steps in our Bi-Fold-Folio style double notebook journal thing. I should just give it a name like, you know, Susan, because I honestly just hate naming things. Look at, I thought I had cleaned up all the edges. This fabric is consistently going to just do this, apparently. Anyhow, we're going to do next steps. So today, the main things that we're going to need is paper. So whatever kind of, you know, like paper that you're going to use to layer on top here. I'm using Tim Holtz paper. You can use any sort of scrapbook paper. You could use, like I said in the last video, you can use printed papers. I just recommend something with a little bit more weight to it, so that if you're just using plain copy paper, that might be a little bit more difficult. It might want to wrinkle up a little bit if we put some glue on it. So, you know, just kind of be smart about it. I would recommend something with a little bit more weight. The Tim Holtz paper is great because it's more like a kind of a lightweight cardstock. So that works really good for this. So any kind of 12 by 12, and it doesn't have to be double-sided because we're only going to see one side on the, you know, clearly you're not going to see both sides on this. So that's what we need. And then some sort of ruler, because we're going to be measuring. So everybody's, you know, unless you're doing exactly my measurements, everybody's might be slightly different. Plus, depending on how you sewed around your thing, you know, your measurements for sewing might be slightly different. Who knows? And then probably a paper cutter or something like that. Otherwise, you can always measure and draw, you know, make pencil marks and cut out that way if you don't have a bigger paper cutter. And yeah, I think that's probably where we're at right now. I am going to use some glue, but I'm probably just going to use my regular art glitter glue for this one. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is, I'm going to flip through here and pick out some papers. So we're going to have a piece on the front here, a smaller piece, and I've already got some like offcuts that I think I can use. I like this flower here, so maybe we'll use that. Or I also kind of like this background piece here, and this has got like a weird little fold bend in it that I must have been doing something with. So but I've got this part of it as well. So, and then I've got another piece of it. So we're gonna have one there, we're gonna have one here, we're gonna have pieces here and here, not on the back of the spine, but we will have a skinny little piece on the edge of the spine. We'll have a piece back here, not on the rounded part here, we're not going to, but on the inside flap here. So we'll have pieces on front and back of the flap, front and back of the cover, front and back of the back cover, and then we'll have a single strip here on the edge. So we're going to need papers for all of those. So you can kind of pick out complementary papers. You can pick out however you want it to look. You can pick out, you know, plain papers like this and then collage over top of them. I mean, you can kind of do whatever you want. Clearly, this is your project, and I'm not your mom. Like Nick the Booksmith says, I'm not your mom. So you can pick out whatever you want to. My journal that I'm working with is like super eclectic. So it does, if it was botanical, you know, I would try to use those things, but seriously, it's a super eclectic journal. So I kind of don't mind any of these being the thing. And whatever piece goes here is going to have a traveler's notebook and stuff over it anyway. So it's not that big a deal. So I think I'm going to use these pieces, you know, one side or the other for my flap pieces. So I've got those. I'm going to set those over here. And then I think I will use, let's see, let me look at these really quick here. I love this piece of paper. I love that design. I think I'm going to use this piece for here. And I don't think that I'll be, well, yeah, I'll probably be able to get the front and back out of one piece. Because this was 6, I think, and this is a 12 by 12. So I think I can use this for both the front and back. Actually, maybe I'll use that for the front and back. And then, since this piece is sitting here, I'll just use that. And we'll just go with that. And we'll just be happy with it, and we'll be good with it. Ooh, just kidding. I think I love this design too. So I think I'll use some of that too. Maybe I'll skip this super floral one and I'll save that for a different day. I'm going to set those over there. All right. So next, what we need to do is measure how big we want to cut our pieces. So we want the piece here to be almost to the edges, but I want to stop short of my sewing because this is more just a structural and design thing. This is clearly good enough that I could sew, you could stop right here. Honestly, you could stop right here and sew your journal in and have it be good. You could put the elastic over the top here. And it'd be fine. I just liked how this next step is going to tighten this up quite a bit and make it feel almost like solid, like bookboard. Plus I just like the layered effect and stuff. So I'm doing the next, but you could just stop here. And if you want to stop here, say if you use some really detailed fabric or something that you just really love, you could stop here, make a cover piece, layer some stuff up and put the elastic on and then bind your signature in here. I'm going to the next step. So I'm going to have mine come almost to the edge. So I'm going to line my ruler up just slightly off here. And then I'm going to come over. Oops, my scissors and everything in the way here. And I'm looking at probably, because we're also going to sew around this. That's why I want to stop short of my sewing here. So I'm going to find my widest part of my sewing, which is this little thing that comes out here. So I'm going to go to the edge of that and then how far over I want to come over here. So I'm looking at 5 3/4. And then I'm just going to flip open and make sure that looks right on the back side here too. So if I go my thing there and 5 3/4, yeah. So you want to cut your piece for the inside and the outside exactly the same. So 5 3/4 by, my lowest point here is there, and my highest, point is about there. So 5 3/4 by 8 3/4, I think. So let's cut that first. Otherwise, there's no way I'm just going to remember all of these off the top of my head, right? So 5 3/4 by 8. And 3/4. And remember, I need 2 of these, so 5 3/4, and here's 5 3/4 again. Sadly, this piece will not be wide enough for the spine, but it's got some great stuff on it. Look at that, it's got some great stuff. So that's going in my scrap bin. Okay, 5 3/4 by, and then I can cut these at the same time, but I'm going to need this guy out so I can measure. Then I kind of want to decide, what do I want this bottom part, I think, on both of them, so I'll just do it that way. By 8 3/4. And we'll save those. There we go. So we've got front and back. Let's just dry fit this here and see if that looks good. And I think it does. We're going to round the corners off too, or at least I'm going to. So I'm going to set those over there. That's good. Then I am going to flip over and look at my back cover and kind of measure where I want this. Now, again, we have to imagine that this bend, you know, is going to start somewhere here. And as soon as we put this paper onto the cover here, it's going to, you know, put a definite place where it won't bend anymore. So I kind of have to be careful of that. I could just make it the same size as those front covers, but as you can see, I think I can come over a little bit more here. So I will make it the same height, which was 8 3/4, but I'm gonna, let's just do this way. Go to the edge and come in a little bit. And I'm going to say I can go 6 1/4. So 6 1/4 by 8 3/4. So let's cut that. Well, actually, if I go 6 1/4, I can't get both pieces out of this. So let's just do 6. You know, in the interest of saving a whole nother sheet, cutting into a whole nother sheet. So we'll go exactly 6, and then we'll go 8 3/4. Okay, so we've got the back covers. Then we need to measure and cut for the flap here. And again, we want to kind of be aware of where our curve is going to stop. So I'm going to go somewhere right in here because our back cover will come to like here. And that allows for this whole part of the curve to stay flexible for, you know, movement back and forth. But then it will solidify up this flap for us. So we know again that it's going to be 8 3/4. We'll just go with the same height, and that kind of provides for uniformity when you're looking at it. But let's go, there's kind of my high point. And then I'm going to say, um, 3 1/2. So 3 1/2. Let's see. I'm going to go, I like the white side. Sorry, indecisiveness. 3 1/2. Now this is wide enough that I could use this as my spine piece. 3 1/2 by 8 3/4. And we'll see, how does that fit? That fits good. And that's got the rip side there, so we'll cut that part off. Three and a half. By 8 3/4. Okay, then the last piece we need, sorry, I've got all of my scraps interfering. The last piece we need is for the spine right here. We're going to put a little piece along the spine. So it's a 1-inch spine. So we probably only want like a 3/4 inch piece. Pardon me. Let's see. I don't know. I might just want only like just over a 1/2 inch. Like 5/8. I think I'm gonna go 5/8. And then we're gonna go with the same height. So that one has got the tear in it. That's not gonna work. I want to cut that side off. So 5/8. And I'm going to just make sure that I'm all the way measured right there. Okay. And we'll just check that against the spine, and that looks good. Excuse me. That looks good, right? 5/8 right there. And then I just need it cut down to 8 3/4. And I'm going to cut off that bent side. 8 3/4. Okay. So now we've got all of our pieces cut. I am going to take my corner chomper and do all the corners because I just like the way that it looks. I think it gives it a little bit neater finished look. You do not have to do this. You make your choices. But I'll be right back. I'm going to finish these up. All right, and in the interest of, you know, making everything look uniform and my love of gathered twigs distress oxide, I am going to go ahead and ink around the edges of all these, and you'll see I did corner chomp these. You do have to be really careful when you corner chomp them because like on mine, it doesn't, you can't line the paper up on the edge. It wants to just slide right through because it gets past the guides. So you just got to be careful. You could even do it with a scissor if you really wanted to, if you're accurate. I know I'd cut mine wrong and then just do them over and over again. So anyway, I'm going to ink these up and I'll be right back. Okay guys, we've got all of our pieces cut. Now the one thing we need to address before we go ahead and start fixing them onto things is that on the front piece here, if you want to put any sort of label, so I turned mine this way, and then I had on my last one a piece of, oh, I thought I grabbed one out. I'll grab one. But I had a piece of leather, and then I had a little label here. So this is also where our hitch post fastener, or maybe a button or something. We'll look at options for that in a minute, but that's where that's going to go as well. But if you wanted to put something here for interest, you probably want to do it before you put it onto here permanently, because then if we put brads through paper fasteners, we can hide them behind here, and then you won't see them poking through, and you won't have to deal with them poking through onto this paper layer or something like that. So now is the time to look at options for this. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to go grab a few things that we could potentially use just to give you some ideas, and then I'll be right back with those. Okay guys, so I've grabbed out kind of a variety of things and I just wanted to give you some ideas about how we could create some interest on this front panel, okay? Because there's definitely going to be interest here because we're going to have layers. We're going to have elastic and a traveler's notebook and some paper. So you can kind of approach this two ways. You can choose to do it this way. So I grabbed out just like this thing. You can choose to do it this way. However, I kind of like the idea of it being this way, a folio, you know, this way. So that's the way that I'm going to treat mine. So I grabbed out a piece of this leather that I got from Alexandra, which was lovely. And it's got a little hole in the corner there. So I will, you know, I cut it off last time and then I cut it down. So you can layer things up. You can do this. You can put some burlap down behind it to add even more texture. And then over top that, put something like a little nameplate holder, right? Or last time I had the largest of my Tim Holtz little plates like this, but that definitely looks cool if you put some brads through it. That's really a cool look. You can build this up instead of burlap underneath. You can put fabric, or you can do layers of all of those things, right? Here's burlap, fabric, leather, and then the nameplate, right? Like you can really layer this up however you want to. I'm going to put those things aside. I've got these cork. These are like cork sticker labels. I think I got them on clearance somewhere a long time ago. That would add some interest and look kind of cool, right? A different type of style. I've got some of these Tim Holtz frames. So that would definitely look cool. That would add a different kind, and you could put a different kind of paper underneath behind that, right? So then that becomes the place they can write their name or the name of the journal or whatever. I've got a different frame here. I think these are like just an off-brand Michaels or Hobby Lobby or something. But that would be a nice big plate. And you could put something behind there. You could put some lined paper, coffee dyed paper, just set it apart so they could write, you know, you can write your name in there or whatever. I've got a couple different pieces of like paper labels that I have just sitting around. You can layer these up, like, you know, you can layer with some different types of paper underneath, right? Whatever. And make a little collage with like a label as the center. So that becomes your focal point if you've just got paper stuff, if you don't have these other things. Just all ideas. This is one of my digitals. They're called cabinet card labels. And so that would look cool, and you could layer some paper up under there. I thought this is one of the small ones, but there are large ones too. These are Tracy Fox's tin toppers, and something like that would make a great spot right there. There's bigger ones and they have different things written on them and whatever. That would be kind of a cool idea. I just like the idea of something to write the name on, but if you don't, or if you want to layer it up with a couple of things, right? You could make something like an applique to be the focus of it. I brought a couple of different examples of, like if we went like that and put a wax seal, and that kind of became the focus. This is definitely going to cut down. Or I've got one here that has a little ribbon behind it. So it could be like that. And you could do a combination, right? You could put that there and put this down there or something. Really, you can layer it up however you want to. So I think what I'm going to do is go with my leather. And then I think I can't decide between putting this on there or that. And I kind of feel like I'm going to do that. But because this is smaller, I want to layer it up a bit. First, let me cut down my leather because I need to cut this side off. I'm going to cut over as close to that hole. Okay, we'll save that little scrap. So now I've got this size piece, and I'm going to trim the corners off. I'm going to miter the corners a little bit here. And I'm eyeballing it, guys. Oh, goodness. See, I'm already unhappy with that. Now I'm going to start going in. Ugh, why do I do these things? That one needs a little more. Okay, good enough, right? Okay. So I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to, this is the other nice thing about doing this before you sew and glue anything down, is I'm going to sew around that, but if I sew around it before I glue this down, then I'm not sewing through all of this and making marks on the back, right? So it's all good. And this isn't a burlappy type of journal, so I'm not going to do burlap there, but I might put some sort of I might put a piece of fabric behind. Yeah, I think I might do that. And then I might even sew around the fabric. Pull off the extra stringy there. Okay, yeah, I kind of like the way that looks. So if I sew around the leather and then I sew the white muslin on, and then I will eventually poke with my awl. I brought my little awl over, and then I'll poke through and we'll put some paper fasteners through there. So I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and do that sewing onto here and put some of these example pieces of stuff and junk away, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got that sewn on, and I zigzagged around the edges of the leather, and then I just sewed straight around there. I did put a little glue down first just to kind of hold it flat while I sewed. Now we need to get this guy on there, so I'm gonna just kind of eyeball it. Yep. And then I'm probably going to use a pin and put a couple of dots through just so I know where I'm going with that. And then I'm just going to poke holes. Goodness. I'm going to do it over the edge of my desk here, so I have a little more leverage to get through that. Ooh, through that leather. Goodness. I think I need a new awl. I think it's dulled up. I have like the world's cheapest owl. It came with a bookbinding. Ugh. It came with the from a bookbinding kit from like a billion years ago when I first started this whole thing, and I just have never needed to replace it, but I think it's getting dull. Okay. So now I need a couple of brads to go through there, and I think I'm going to use these. I love these. They look like screws. So I'm going to get they come with flathead and Phillips, and of course I only have Phillips, so I'm just going to use 2 Phillips. I grabbed 1 flat and 2 Phillips. There we go. So I'm going to put them through and through here. They just barely fit through the holes on this. But doesn't that look cool? They look like screw heads. So I kind of like that. Look, and they're kind of flimsy metal, but that's okay. And because they're kind of flimsy and flat, they're matte. They're not, you can distress them. You can use oxide on them, distress oxide, or alcohol inks, and kind of turn them different colors if you want. They're pretty sweet. I found those on Amazon, I think, too, a long time ago. So I'm going to open those up on the back. And then we've got that affixed. So now we've got our whole little cover piece there, and I love the way that looks. So that's going to look great right on the cover of our journal. So now we've got that taken care of there. And then we don't need to do anything to the back side. And we don't need to do anything to these two pieces that go on the back cover. We don't need to do anything to the spine. The other thing that we need to do is when we're going to put this piece on, we'll be sewing the elastics on with it, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what I'm going to do is take these and I'm going to line them up. And here's the tricky part, because when I sew through here, I want to be hitting this back edge too, right? I don't want to put this on and sew it and then have lines coming through on the fabric and then put this on and sew it and be missing. I want to be able to go through this and have their edges line up. So this is the kind of tricky part. And I'm going to grab, I forgot to grab out, hold on guys. Okay, I forgot to grab out. I'm going to use some double stick tape to try and help hold them in place. I have used my art glitter glue, but I'm going to see, I was thinking that this might work better because at this point, I'm going to be putting 1, 2, 3 layers and fabric and paper. I'm going to be putting all of that through the machine. And I would rather not have even more glue in there. So I'm going to try putting some of this in the middle part where I won't be and just see if it'll hold it in position. That's kind of what I'm going for. So let's hope that that actually works. I'm just going to put a couple of strips down in the part where I won't be sewing. Oops. And then peel back the edge. And so I'm going to center this top piece first because this is the one that you're going to see, you know, right on the front. So I want to get this one on here good and line that up well first. Hopefully that tape trick works, right? We'll see. Yeah, it doesn't want to move. It's not anything permanent, right? Which is not what I'm going for. It's just there to hold it in place while I sew. So that's good. Let's put a couple of pieces on here. For the same purpose. You certainly could use some fabric glue at this point and glue this on. You could glue the middle part. You know, just don't put a ton of glue around up on the edge because that's where you're going to be sewing. So now I'm going to kind of use my spidey senses as I put this on. I can kind of see how far I am up close to the edge. So I'm going to kind of do that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm literally just feeling with my fingers and thumbs at the same time to feel if they feel like they're, and I think this one needs to go this way just a little. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. Yep. Needs to come this way just a little. All right, I think that's good. So I am going to take this to my machine then, and what I'm going to do is sew around I'm going to do the same messy stitching, right? So whatever you do here, do kind of the same here. And I'm going to sew around the edge on this side once. Then I'm going to flip it over and sew on the back side, because you know how your stitches on paper look different on the front than the back, unless you're doing zigzag, but even then sometimes. But straight stitches certainly look different on the front because of the carrier thread on the back. So if you sew through from both sides, it makes both sides look a little more finished. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and show you what the heck I'm talking about. Okay guys, so I've sewn around the edge. So I went around twice on the front, then I flipped it over and went around once on the back. Now, one of the tricks that I will use sometimes, and this is not my idea, and I wish I could remember who I saw this from. You guys, you're going to just watch me all through this whole video chronically messing with the edges of this. But as it went through the sewing machine, of course, as I was handling it, eventually there's not going to be any more threads to cut because they're all just going to be gone, but they're all going to be pulled off. Anyway, you're going to have to do wrangling as you get this thing around and in and around, because it's this big long, you know, oblong shaped thing. Not oblong, but you know what I mean. It's a big long rectangle. And of course, when you get to the part where this part is, when you're sewing this edge, you're going to have to wrestle this thing through. Anyway, you can see where on the back side here, you can see the paper punches through and it gets that kind of white edge. You can take your inker, and I don't dip it in the ink. I just use what's residual on here, and I just kind of go back and forth over that, and it gets rid of the most of the little white pokey through pieces, and it kind of makes it a little more finished looking. Because I went through on this side twice, I really don't have as many of them, but I might just go over it a little, and it's those little finishing touches, right? Okay, it doesn't really get the paper as long as you do it and kind of float it on the stitches. So we've got that done. This is where I'm going to put my maker's mark eventually here. I leave all the little stringies on to a certain extent because I love them, but you know, I don't want them like 5 inches long, so I will trim them up a little. So we've got one piece on. Now we can do our back pieces and our spine piece, and we're going to do those the same way. This is going to be a little more difficult because mine is so thin. I'm going to be sewing around a majority. Oh, and this worked really good, guys. As I was sewing, this definitely worked well. I will, you know, we're going to bind right through this. So you're going to see our binding. This is going to be an exposed binding. You could skip putting this on until the end after you've bound, if you want your stitches to be hidden, right? So we're going to bind through this edge. If you want your stitches to be hidden, you could bind through, get all these other pieces put on and everything like we're going to do, and then skip putting this on, and then bind your book and sew around this as it is so it looks like it's been sewn on, and then just glue it down really good. You could do that. I just like the security of this being sewn on there, so I'm going to go with that. But you know, you can kind of decide how you want to handle that. I don't mind the exposed stitches, and honestly, you probably won't hardly see them through this. And I'll probably use black binding thread, so it'll disappear in the grand scheme of things. So now I got to decide which one do I want. I think I'll put, I can't decide, you guys, if I want this side out or this side out. Like, these look nice together. I think I'll put this side out on the back because I like that look. And I'll just put this side out on the inside too. Why not? Give it some more. I'll just say goodbye to this piece for now. Although I just love this pattern. All right. So I'm going to put some pieces down in the middle again, and I'll do the same on this one. Oh my gosh, you guys. So my camera beeped. Luckily it beeps when it shuts off because I realized that I didn't have it plugged in all the way, and so the battery died, and then it was so dead that I couldn't just plug it in and film, so I had to unplug it and let it charge. And in the meantime, I've had lunch and hung out with my daughter for a little while, who has influenza right now. My 18-year-old, bummer. And we had lunch, and then we watched, if you guys have never seen the squirrel obstacle course videos on YouTube, I highly recommend watching them. There's a couple of them. This guy builds squirrel obstacle courses, and it is pretty stinking hilarious. So we've watched that. I've had lunch. I've excuse me, taking care of a couple of business things. And so I'm back. All right, so luckily I know where we were at. Pardon me. So I am going to, you know what, I'm going to center the one on the back first, and I don't want to lose that. Okay, I'm going to center the one on the back first because that's the one that you'll see the most. And I'm going to try and center it along this edge, because if I can kind of eyeball how close it is to that edge, then that should help me on the inside. And that double stick tape does its job. It holds it in place pretty good. Okay. Now, I know that I was right up close. So I'm going to go right up close, and then again I'm going to use my finger and thumb to try and just make sure. You can kind of squeeze too, because you can feel. But yeah, that feels actually really pretty good. Yep. So I'm going to push that down. All right. So I'm going to go do the same thing for this, and then I am going to do the spine and get that sewn on, and then I'll be back and we'll do this front cover. Okay, guys, so I have got my spine piece sewn on, and I just did my messy, sloppy sewing. Whoops, wrong way. Again there. And then I've got the back sewn on, and same thing. And then I did my inking. So now this piece is really pretty firm, guys. This feels really solid. And because there's now a piece here and a piece here, and this is flexible, it wants to lay open nicer. And once we get this piece done, it'll close nicer too, because it's got some weight to it. So we're getting close. Now we need to put the piece on here. So I'm going to decide which piece I want there. I think I like the other piece there. So I'm going to put that one on the outside and this one on the inside. So I'm going to put my tape on, but then we're going to have to talk through putting the elastic pieces on. And this kind of depends on how thick your traveler's notebook is going to be, but we're going to be kind of guessing because we haven't created the cover for that yet, so I can't really tell you. exactly how thick, but we can make a pretty good guess. And that's the nice thing about elastic is it's forgiving. So if we, you know, and we want to make it a little wider so there's extra room for expansion in case, you know, whoever gets this wants to put stuff in there. So we're going to position these, and then the elastic goes kind of on the top. So I decided this piece, right? This one on the front. So I'm going to position the one on the front first. This one is also, so for multiple reasons, this one is the hardest to sew on because you've got to hold the elastic on there and sew it in place, but also because these are now hard and rigid and you're trying to get them to curl up like under your sewing machine at the same time and manage that. So this is a challenge, but it's not one that you cannot conquer. Because I did and got it to work the first time. Okay, so I'm just kind of using my fingers to feel here. Yeah, that feels about right. So I'm going to press that in. Okay, now, so our traveler's notebook, let me move a couple of these pieces of things here so I can grab it out. Again, just a reminder, it's going to slip behind elastic here, upside down, because the bulk of the pages, right, the width, the most of the width is on this side, not this side. So, and then, you know, our signature in here will be the opposite way. Most of the fluff will be on this side, and this is the thinner part. So if that's fixed. So we can't change that. So that'll be that way. And that way when we put this in, if we put it like this, we're going to end up with all the bulk on the same side. So you'll see when we create the cover for this, it'll slide in this way. But let me grab back now my two types of elastic. So our first piece needs to go over this to hold it in. I want to give myself a little room on this side because I'm going to fold it over just like that, just to give it kind of a nicer finished edge. I'm not going to fold it over too much because I don't want it to interfere with this sliding in and out. I want it just enough to go there. Then I'm not going to pull it very taut because I don't want it to have to, you know, I don't want to have to try and anticipate how wide. So I'm going to just give it a little bit of stretch and come down. Mine is nice. It's got these lines in it. So I can kind of know there's where I want. And then I'm going to come over just, so there's where the edge of it is, like this. Then I'm going to come over about a ½ an inch to give myself a little extra stretch and then account for the fold over on that end. And then I'm going to give it a cut. So there's my first piece. It's going to fold over just a tad on the ends, just enough to give it a finished edge, and then go on. Right now it holds it in place, but once we've got a cover on there, it'll make it a little bit tighter and that'll work perfect. So good job. I think I had to measure a couple times on the first time. So we're doing good. I learned my lesson. Okay, so we can put that away. Then we also need a piece of this, and I'm just going to cut myself a good chunk because this is what's going to go. We're going to sew it on at the same time that we sew this. We're going to sew this in place because it's what will come up and over to this closure here. So it's going to need to come up and over like this. Now, this is kind of a guess, but I seem to have cut myself just the right amount because, and let's see if we can see this. It's black on black, so it's gonna be really hard. Can you see? There's my two pieces of elastic thread. Yep, you can see that. So there, whoops, there are my two pieces of elastic thread, and I'm lining them up with the edge here because I want to fold them all over so we get a nice finished edge. So one more time, I'm going to take my two pieces here, line them up with the middle of this piece, right? So I've got my loop down here, and I've got my two pieces lined up at the edge here. And then those pieces are going to fold over the edge with this. And that's the finished edge that we're going to go for. So that's how you're going to sew it down on this side, the seam side. And you want to sew over all that. So again, this is tricky. You have to, you know, like I'm going to start up here and do this side first because this is the easiest side to do. Unfortunately, the trickiest side where you're trying to manage getting all this through the machine and sew these on at the same time, that's of course all happens at the same time. So that's why, that's a big reason why this messy sewing works for me on this project, because it, you know, hides a multitude of sins. So if you get all wonky over here trying to get over that, you can just go back and forth a few times and it'll just match all the crazy sewing. So what I am going to do before I put the elastic is, I'm going to go to the inside. I'm going to go around once on the inside so that that side gets its nice finished look. And that's when I'm going to come to the outside, go around once. And then when I go over these on the side, I'm going to put them on the last go around. That way I'm not trying to sew over the elastic each time. It just gets on there once. But if you do it with a nice tight stitch, or if you do it with zigzag over the edge of the elastic part, that way it'll be really securely on there. So that's what we're going for. You want to make sure, you know, this is where, again, dry fitting works well. You want to make sure that your, you know, hitch post fastener or button, like we can talk about that really quick here. Like here's you could put a button here, right? So there's a button I just happen to have. You could fix a button here, but I'm going to use a hitch post fastener, which, hold on, I have some of right, wait for it, right here. And it's this little guy, and Tim Holtz makes them, but also like Hobby Lobby makes a knockoff version of them. And this is actually two parts. So the bottom part unscrews and you end up with two pieces like that. So this is the part that goes on the bottom, and this is the part that goes on the top. And this looks like a little flathead screwdriver, or a screw, looks like a flathead screw. Oh. Right? So you can actually, if you want to get it really nice and tight, you can put a screwdriver on there, but usually I find I can just, you know, finger tighten it. So you want to poke, we're going to punch a hole, and then this goes, that goes on the bottom and this goes on top. So that's going to be there. I'm not going to put it on yet because I don't want to have to be dealing with this thing sticking out while I'm trying to sew all of this. But just imagine that's where that's going to be, right there. So your elastic thread, you can do, you know, one of two ways. You can sew the loop end down and cut yourself a really long piece. Sew the loop end down, and that way you can come up here and just tie a knot. You know, if you left yourself a long piece, come up there, tie a knot wherever you feel like it, and then just have that knot there, which works just fine. Otherwise, you're going to try and, you know, do the measuring and make sure this fits. Now it's got to fit over both of my signatures. So I might have cut myself too short a piece. Let's see. Got to account for the bending over. Whoops. See, this is hard, guys. But we're smart and strong women. We can do this. I might not be physically strong, but I can figure this out. Okay, so I'm just imagining. That's got plenty of give still, and it's going to hold it securely. So I'm good. I think I'm good where I'm at. I just happened to magically cut that the right length. Let me put this back together so I don't lose it. And I'm going to put it over there. Okay, so like I said, I am going to go sew around the inside first, then I'm going to sew around the outside, and then I am going to sew my elastic on, and I will be back hopefully with a successful job. Okay, guys, I did it. It took me a little longer than I thought because I had to stop and change my needle because I literally bent the tip of my needle. But I think part of that reason is this one was probably getting pretty dull, and then I was trying to go through 2 layers of paper, the cardboard in between, 2 layers of fabric, and 2 layers of elastic, and it just said, nope, I give up. You are asking for too much. So now I need to, I'm gonna put that over here so I dispose of it appropriately, but the good news is it worked and I got everything sewn on. So I zigzagged back and forth a couple of times over the 2 places where it, here's where I got all wonky over here. So I'm going to cut those extra strings off. And then I'm going to take some of this excess stringage up here and just trim it down a little. Like I said, I don't mind all the extra wonky black strings hanging out, so I'm going to leave those. But now we're ready to put our hitch post fastener on. So I am going to grab it back out of where I had it hiding, and then I just want to kind of line it up with where this is coming off and going up to here, and center it on that. So I'm going to take my crocodile, I'm going to punch it with the you can see this little post is fairly small, so I'm going to punch it with the 1/8 side, the smaller of the 2 holes, and I'm going to center it, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm not punching anything inadvertently with the other one on the downside, on the bottom side, because I've done that before. All right, I've got my hole, and the bottom piece goes up through the bottom. So this bottom piece, the screw head piece goes on the bottom, and then the actual little post goes on top. You can't go through anything super thick with this because the screw is only so long. So there we go. That's on there good and tight. I don't feel like I need a screwdriver. So it's got a cool finish on this side, and it comes over and closes there. So that's how that will work. That comes over there and holds the whole thing shut, which looks all loosey-goosey right now, but that's because we don't have any signatures in, right? And so the next part is to create a cover for our traveler's notebook, which we will do in the next video. The big signature will be sewn in here, and so we'll just bind it in, no problem. And then you can decorate these as you want to, you know, put envelopes or pockets or decorate them or leave them plain, whatever you want to do. And then the traveler's notebook will slide in here, but in order to do that, I need to build the cover for it. So we'll do that in our next video, but look at how far we've come today. We have got the essentials of this thing done. And you can use this, like I said, if you wanted to put more signatures in, you could build this bigger and have a bigger spine and still do this application on the front and still have it fold over. You would just have a much wider, you know, score lines here and a much wider spine. So you could reduce this down and make a very small little size one of these. Like I think I might try and make a smaller version of this too and just see how it turns out. But this is me recreating the first one I made. So that's what I'm doing here. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this second part, guys. I am going to try and film the next part right away here today so I can get it up the day after you're seeing this. And so I hope that I'm going to be chronically doing this for the next who knows how long. I hope that you guys have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night, whatever time it is, on whatever side. Oh, look at this. This has been hanging here the whole time, huh? Well, whatever, on whatever side of this wonderful planet of ours that you live on, I hope that it's good. I hope that you're having a good time. And I hope that you're able to do something crafty and be with the ones that you love. And until I see you guys next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless you. Bye, guys.